Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to MOS Live Virtual Planetarium. My name is Christina. I'll be serving as your moderator today, and even though you can see me now, you'll mostly be hearing my voice later as I share your observations and questions with our educator. If you would like to share observations or ask questions about the sky tonight, you can do so by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please don't forget to include your name and age if you would like a shout out. Also, if you need captions today, you can get those by selecting the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen if you're watching us on Zoom and selecting show captions. If you happen to be watching on Facebook, unfortunately, we will not be able to see your observations or questions, but we're so happy to have you join us today and we hope you enjoy the program. With all that being said, I would like to invite our educator to turn on their camera, introduce themselves, and get us started.
Hey everybody, my name is Talia. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm going to be showing you a few things that you can see in the sky using a free program called Stellarium, which you can download and which we'll have the name of that program on our final slide in case I'm not saying it very clearly. But first I'm going to share my screen. And this is the sky, the way it's going to look tonight over Boston at around midnight, right around midnight. And we are facing north. This is obviously way more stars than you're going to see in the city of Boston, because of course, in the middle of the city, you have to deal with things like light pollution, which means a lot of city lights going up and blotting out stars, similar to the way sunlight can do it. Only not nearly as strong as the sun. So you're not going to see too many stars from Boston, but I'm going to point out a few things that you can see even in the middle of the city. And to do that, we're going to not face north. I'm going to spin us around to face the southern horizon. So right away, we have two very bright objects in the southern horizon and in the southern sky. And if you've watched our show in the last several weeks, we've mentioned these two objects several times, so you may be able to guess what they are. They are not stars. There's your hint. So go ahead, if you know what they are, or if you think you know what they are, go ahead and put your answers in the Q&A, or if you have no idea what they are, feel free to put in a question mark, because it's always important to know what you don't know.
That's always a good life lesson, Talia. And we're giving a few moments for some of these answers to come in, but it looks like we have a couple of question marks from Faith. Jonathan thinks maybe they might be Saturn and Jupiter. We've got quite a few Saturns and Jupiters, actually, and a couple more question marks.
Excellent. And we are, in fact, looking at the planets Saturn and Jupiter, these two extremely bright objects here in the southern sky. And they are going to be very, very easy to pick out. Jupiter is the fourth brightest natural object that appears in Earth's sky. Only the sun, the moon, and Venus are brighter than Jupiter. So Jupiter is this one that is farther to the west or to the right, if you're facing south. And Saturn is the slightly dimmer one. It will still be a lot brighter than all the stars around it. You can still see it from the middle of the city. And they're very close to each other in the southern sky right now. And these two are great targets if you have binoculars or a telescope. You can certainly see them with your eyes. If you have binoculars or a telescope, you will be able to see some additional details about each of them. Jupiter has 4 large moons that go around it that you can see through binocular or through a decent pair of binoculars or a small telescope. It doesn't take much. And these are the moons that we call the Galilean moons, after Galileo, who was the first to see them through a telescope. And they are the 4 largest moons of Jupiter. Jupiter has 79 moons. Most of them are way too small for us to see without a really big telescope, though. And what's really fun is if you look at Jupiter from night to night, you will actually see the positions of those moons change around the planet because, of course, they are orbiting and they've got relatively short orbits. So they move visibly from night to night. So definitely check out Jupiter if you get the chance. It will show off its moons to you. Saturn has a different feature to show off. You may also be able to see if you're looking through a pretty decent telescope, you may be able to see one or two of Saturn's moons, but the big draw here is the rings. It does not take much magnification to be able to see that Saturn is not round the way Jupiter is when you look at it through a telescope. It will look oval. And if you've got a decent telescope, it won't just look oval, it will visibly have rings around it. It doesn't take too much to see Saturn's rings. And this is a really good time of Saturn's year to be looking at the rings, because just like Earth, Saturn is tilted. And what we're looking at here is Northern Hemisphere summer. And when it's Northern Hemisphere summer, the rings are tilted towards us their maximum amount. This is a great time of Saturn's year for us here on Earth. In Saturn's fall and Saturn's spring, the rings are more edge on and we cannot see them nearly as well. So this is a great time to be looking at Saturn's rings. And that summer is only going to last another, oh, I don't know, 5 years or so. Saturn moves really slowly. And if you do have a good telescope, you might be able to spot one or two of Saturn's moons, especially its big moon, Titan. Titan is the size of a small planet. So those are two planets that you will see in the sky. They're going to be visible pretty soon, right after sunset. You should be able to see them very soon after the sky starts to get dark. If you wait long enough, they're not going to be the only bright targets in the sky, because they're not the only solar system objects in the sky. I'm going to swing us towards the east, and we have two more very, very bright objects in the sky. Now, if you were going to guess what these objects are, go ahead and put your guess in the Q&A, or if you happen to know what they are, put those in, or if you have no idea, put a question mark.
All right, we have a few answers slowly trickling in here, Talia. Some people think it might be the moon and Mars. We have a couple of question marks. One person thinks it might be Antares, and some more question marks.
Excellent. So we are in fact looking at the moon and Mars, and you can tell, you'll be able to tell the moon. I'm going to zoom in so you can see what the actual phase of the moon is, because stellarium always makes it look like a full moon until you zoom in. So this is a phase that we call a waning gibbous. Gibbous is a funny word for a funny shape. It means that there's a dark crescent. It means we're between a full moon and a quarter moon. And it is a great phase to go and look at the moon through binoculars. Since you've got your binoculars or your telescope out because you were looking at Saturn and Jupiter, this is a good phase of the moon to go look at. Everybody always wants to go look at it during full moon, because that's when the moon looks really bright and spectacular. But the best place to observe the moon is right along this line here, the line between day and night, which we call the terminator. It's where the shadows are longest, and that's where you're going to get the most contrast. In this particular case, it's where sunset is happening on the moon. So that's sunset on the moon right there. And people, I feel like, underestimate the moon as a target because we take it for granted a little bit. It's always there, but it is a gorgeous target. And if you can't find the moon with your binoculars, you may need a little more practice, or the lens covers are on. And right next to it in the sky tonight is this red object, which is, of course, the planet Mars, the red planet. And you can see it is visibly red. If you look at it in the sky, it's going to have a reddish tint to it. It's not going to be like blood red or anything like that, but it has a noticeable red color to it. There is a reason why different cultures all over the world named it for fire, for blood, for war, because it does have that distinctive color to it. And Mars has been in the news a lot lately. We did just launch a spacecraft. It's on its way to Mars right now. It carries the Perseverance rover, our next big Mars rover. It's going to get there in February, because even though Mars is pretty close to us, it's not a short trip. And this is the reason we do that at this point is because Mars is getting closer to us. Mars and Earth are near each other in their orbits. So Mars being kind of close to us also means it's relatively bright. So this is a good time of year to go looking for Mars. And if you look at it look at this one through binoculars or your telescope, you're going to see a slightly bigger red dot. It's not that impressive. Doesn't have any cool rings, or it does have moons. They're little tiny dinky things. You're not going to be able to see them. Now, somebody mentioned Antares, and I'm glad you did. It's just setting over here in the west when Mars is rising in the east, but it is this reddish object right here, also a bright red object. So the way to remember tonight that whether you're looking at Antares or Mars, if you're looking at it in the early part of the night, that's Antares. If you're looking at it in the later part of the night, that's Mars. And there's a reason why Antares is called Antares. Roughly translated, it means not Mars. And they named it that because it is a bright red object in the same area of the sky that Mars can appear in. So we've got a whole stream of planetary, of solar system objects visible right at midnight. And before I fast forward time a little bit, Christina, are there any questions I should try and answer before we keep going?
Our question box is empty for the moment.
Excellent. So I'm going to fast forward time a little bit because this is not the end of the parade of planets. If you are, say you are not somebody who likes to stay up late, you're somebody who likes to get up early, or you're somebody who likes to stay up really, really late, one or the other, there is yet another planetary treat. So here we are. It has just risen. We are looking at it. It's going to be rising about 3 in the morning and nice and visible in the sky right before sunrise. One of the brightest objects in the sky. It is, in fact, the planet Venus. So you can get planets in your evening sky and you can get planets in your morning sky. And if you're willing to make a whole night of it, you can see 4 of the 5 planets that you can see with your naked eye. The 5th being Mercury, which is very, very close to the sun right now, and I don't recommend going to look for it. You'll damage your eyes. Now, since you have your binoculars or your telescope out, go ahead and look at Venus. Venus does not have rings. It does not have a moon. What it does do is go through phases because it is closer to the sun than we are. And I realize I'm zooming in. There it is. Let's pause time. Because it's closer to the sun than we are, we actually see it go through phases the same way we see the moon go through phases. And if you look at Venus tonight, you can see it's going to be about a half Venus, or rather tomorrow morning. And that is going to change as Venus continues in its orbit around the sun. You're going to see different phases of Venus. So lots of fun planets to be looking at with your binoculars or your telescope. Now, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do a bit of a time jump. I'm going to bring us back to midnight, which you can do in Stellarium. Stellarium can go to any time or any place on Earth. So I'm going to bring us back to midnight, but not midnight tonight. I'm going to jump ahead to midnight on the 12th. So this is going to be a couple of days from now. This thing on the horizon here, this is the moon rising. It's now going to be a quarter moon. And it's looking red here because you may notice the moon often looks red when you first see it rising. And the reason I have brought us to this night, which like I said, is a few nights in the future, is because this is when one of the most famous meteor showers is going to be peaking, the Perseids. I'm going to use a function of Stellarium that I don't usually use, which is to turn on the meteor showers. Now, what this is doing is marking where meteor showers appear to radiate from. So you can see there's lots of them. Earth hits a lot of meteor showers. Most of them aren't worth bothering about. You know, they're not really noticeable. The Perseids, on the other hand, are pretty good. And if you want to check out the Perseids, so what a meteor shower is when a comet passes through the solar system, just like Comet Neowise did a couple of weeks ago, it is giving off ice and gas coming off of the comet, and it leaves that stuff behind in a trail. And there are some comets whose paths cross Earth's. And that means that debris that's been left by the comet is in Earth's way. And Earth plows into it once a year. And so that is what a meteor shower is. It is the debris left behind by a comet that Earth is just moving through. The Perseids are left by a comet that was last in the inner solar system in 1992. It has a 133-year orbit, so it's not coming back for a while. And it's left this trail of debris that happens to cross Earth's orbit right where Earth is around August 12th and 13th. So every August 12th to 13th, the Perseid meteor shower peaks. Now, it doesn't mean you have to look at it on the 12th. It's not just happening on the 12th. And in fact, I would recommend maybe trying to not look at it on the 12th, but I'm going to fast forward or go backwards a little bit. Maybe rather the night of the 11th or the night of the 12th instead of a midnight at 12:30 in the morning on the 12th. Try doing it at 10 o'clock at night on the 12th, because right when the Perseids are peaking, that's when the moon is rising. And moons are not great for observing meteors. What you want to do to observe meteors, it's pretty easy. Find the darkest place you can, which far from city lights. And if you can find a place that's blocking any light coming from houses or from street lights, and just lie back and look up and let your eyes have some time to adjust. The more adjusted to the dark your eyes are, the more likely you are to see meteors. And then just watch for them. Meteors look like bright streaks of light in the sky. We sometimes call them shooting stars, even though they don't actually have anything to do with stars. It's pieces of debris, bits of ice, bits of dust. In this case, it's been left behind by a comet that hit Earth's atmosphere and actually burn up as they're passing through the atmosphere. And that leaves that beautiful bright streak behind. And Earth gets hit a lot. Earth gets hit by about 100 tons of material every day. So it's constantly got meteors happening, but a lot of them are in the daytime where you can't see them. And what happens with a meteor shower is that there's more stuff than usual that's hitting Earth. And so you get a lot more meteors. And the Perseids are one of the better ones. It's, you might be able to see something like 10 to 15 meteors an hour, even with the moon up. So it's not like it's going to be raining shooting stars, but this is a pretty good meteor shower. And if you can catch it near its peak, which is going to be about midnight on the 12th, then you're going to see the best it's got to offer. But try to do it before the moon rises, because the moon is going to affect what you can see. I'm going to pause there for a moment. Christina, are there any questions I should be answering?
We do have a couple of questions. I think one about planets, one about moons, and one about the Perseids, if that sounds okay.
Sure.
Maybe some clarification or reminder questions. So our folks would like to know, could you remind us what time we should look for the Perseids? And if you happen to miss them, when would be the next opportunity to see them?
So the Perseids happen annually. They're something that happen every year. So if you don't see them this year, you'll be able to see them again in August next year. And the best time to see them will be late at night on the 11th and late at night on the 12th will be your best chances. Try to do it before the moon rises, which is going to be at about midnight on about when the 11th turns to the 12th. That's about when the moon is going to be rising. And then it'll be a little in the wee, very early time on the 13th is when it will be rising. So the late hours of the 12th, the late hours of the 11th will be your best bet to go look for the Perseids. And if you miss the Perseids, they're not the only cool meteor shower. The next really good one isn't until December. That's probably the best meteor shower of the year, the Geminids. But there are other meteor showers if you miss this one. This one just happens to occur in the nice warm summer months.
Thank you for that reminder, Talia. And we've got one more reminder. Faith Age 9 would like to know, can you remind us what time Mars is out?
Yes, so Mars is visible at midnight. And get rid of all of these meteor showers that we don't care about. So here it is. Right now we're looking at, this is on the 11th at 11:10 p.m. So it's going to be low on the horizon. Right now, if you want to catch it, it's got to be really late at night. But if you give it a few weeks, it's going to be rising a little bit earlier. So you will catch it a little earlier in the evening if you wait a few weeks. But right now, if you want to see it, your best bet is to be looking at it around midnight, which is past my bedtime.
Past my bedtime too. And we have two related questions for moons and their relationships to planets. So they would like to know, how do moons stay next to their planets? And Alina, age 4, wants to know why Venus doesn't have any moons.
Excellent question. So it is just like the gravity of the sun keeps the Earth and all of the planets in orbit around the sun. The gravity of a planet keeps its moons in orbit around it. So our moon is kept in orbit around Earth by Earth's gravity. Jupiter's 79 moons are kept in orbit by Jupiter's gravity. Saturn's 82 moons and also its big rings are all kept in orbit by its gravity. So gravity is really king in the universe. And not all planets have moons. There's a couple of ways that planets can get moons. In our case, we think when the Earth was very young, something very large smashed into it and knocked a bunch of pieces off, which then collected together to become our moon. We think Mars's two dinky moons are things that formed elsewhere and got too close to Mars, and Mars caught them with its gravity. And Venus just hasn't had those kinds of opportunities. Venus didn't have anything smack into it, so no moon formed in its orbit. And it hasn't had the opportunity to capture one. It's not the only one without a moon. Mercury also does not have a moon.
Awesome. I'm just checking in, Talia. Do you have time for a couple more questions, or was there something else you'd like to show us before we do?
I mean, I was just going to mention why the Perseids, in case anybody's wondering why the Perseids are called the Perseids. They appear to, if you drew the line backwards, like if you followed the line of the meteor's path through the sky and you traced it backwards, they would all appear to radiate from this constellation right here, which is called Perseus. Now, that means that sometimes you see things that say you have to be looking towards Perseus in order to see the Perseids, but that is not the case. You're going to be able to see meteors all over the sky. They're just, if you traced them all backwards, they would appear to originate from this patch of sky. And that's why all meteor showers have a name like the Perseids or the Geminids, or, you know, the Taurids. They're named after the constellation that they appear to radiate from. In this case, Perseus. But I'm happy to open it up for questions if there's people who have questions they would like answered. I love answering questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Talia. Let's see. So this I think is related to a comment you mentioned earlier. You said we could see 4 of the 5 visible planets in the sky. And so I was hoping maybe you could elaborate a little bit about what you mean by that, because there is a question here about when is it a good time to see Neptune and Uranus?
Neptune and Uranus are ones that you need a telescope to be able to see. And it means I don't keep track of them nearly as well. I think Uranus is up. I don't know if I put the planet names on. I don't think it's going to label them, but you know what? There's a way to do this because Stellarium has a search window. That's not how you spell it. All right, so Uranus is actually very close to Mars in the sky, apparently right under the constellation Aries. So it is quite faint. You will need a telescope to be able to see it. It also has an array of moons. So that is where Uranus is in the sky. I honestly have absolutely no idea where Neptune is, but that's okay. Stellarium will find it for me. Stellarium says it is also in the sky. So actually, if you really want to be going, and it turned on everything, I don't know why. If you want to be searching for those outer planets, this is actually a really good time to be doing it, especially in the wee hours of the morning, Uranus and Neptune will also be up if you have a telescope and can go hunting for them. And I wish you luck.
I think, yes, we will need a lot of luck in that, Talia. We have another question here about why does Venus shine so brightly in the sky?
That is a great question. It has to do with a couple of different things. Venus is actually the closest planet to us. I know we talk about Mars a lot, but Venus is actually physically, its orbit is physically closer to the Earth's. It's closer to the sun, which means it's catching a lot more intense sunlight. And Venus is covered in very reflective clouds. When we look at Venus, we're not seeing the surface, we're seeing the atmosphere. And clouds are very reflective. So it's close. It's very close to a very intense light source, and it's covered with very reflective material, all of which help make Venus, even when we're not looking at a full Venus, you saw we're looking at a half Venus right now, doesn't matter. It's still going to be the brightest thing in the sky that is not the sun and the moon.
Excellent. And maybe we have time for one more question, Talia. And let's see, it's specifically about the moon. So could you explain a little bit more about how is it that the moon appears to be moving around the night sky from our perspective here on Earth? And keeping that in mind, like what's the best way to watch it with a telescope?
Sure. So the moon appears to be moving because it is. It's in orbit around the Earth. It orbits Earth once. It's about a month. It takes about a month. It's where we get the word month from. It comes from the word moon. So it takes about a month for the moon to orbit the Earth. And what that means is that it moves visibly every night because it's actually moving pretty quickly. So you can, let's see if I can find us, I'm going in the wrong direction. Find us a moon. So there it is. You can see I'm running time backwards at the moment, but you can see its position visibly change, even though we're staying at the same time of night. If you just jump ahead a day, and this is marking the movement of the moon around the Earth because the moon is orbiting. Now, if you want to observe the moon, it's one of the easiest targets to observe. It's great for observing. It's pretty hard to miss because it is so big in the sky and it is nice and bright. I highly recommend looking at it when it's not a full moon. Like I said, I think the best place to look is right where either the sun is rising or the sun is setting on the moon. So near the terminator. And that's where, just like on Earth, in the early morning and in the late afternoon, the shadows are really long. That's where you're going to get the most contrast. You're going to be able to see the most detail. So that's when I recommend observing the moon. And you can do that with your eyes. You can also do it with very low powered binoculars. If you have a really good telescope, you actually may need a filter because it'll be very, very bright. So it's a great target. I love looking at it.
Well, thank you so much, Talia, for sharing so many great things we can be looking for in the sky tonight. We're all just going to say a big thank you to Talia. Talia can say goodbye and then we'll continue.
Bye, everybody.
And I wanted to thank our audience today for being such a wonderful group here in our program. I'm sorry if we weren't able to get to all of your questions and observations, but we are out of time. So what I will say is if you'd like to see this program again or other programs from the Museum of Science, you can check out our offerings at www.mos.org/mos@home. And if you would like to support the museum, you can find more information about that by visiting our site at engage.mos.org/welcome. We hope you enjoyed the program today. Thank you for joining, and we will see you at the next one.